Hola, buen camino. I'm Brian.
Hi, I'm Michelle.
And we are cruising with the Colemans. This is day number 12 of walking, and we are on the outskirts of the village of Castañeda, and we are walking today to the village of Pedrouzo. We're about 43 kilometers to Santiago, according to the concrete Camino markers. There's one right there. However, that one says 42 kilometers. However, they are notorious for not being very accurate because since they were put into place, the route has changed a little bit in various villages. So they're kind of approximate numbers. We're walking about 27 kilometers today. And our terrain's supposed to be kind of a variety of up and down and up and down. No major steep hills, just kind of a lot of rolling hills and valleys.
Where are we headed to today?
Pedrouzo.
Pedrouzo. So it's about the same temperature as it's been the whole time. It's about 58 degrees Fahrenheit. I think we might get rained on today. Not too sure. It's going to be probably looking like this all day. Nothing as pretty as yesterday. I'm carrying a small pack today. I'm carrying my own water. The shipping my pack ahead, as you heard in the last video that I did yesterday for the first time, worked really well. My foot is not bothering me quite as bad. So hopefully that will continue to work because we've got a long journey ahead of us, even though we're coming to Santiago tomorrow.
So this video is going to have our last 2 days of walking into Santiago on it. And then we might put a little bit of our travel on here from Santiago to Lisbon as we get ready to start the Camino Portuguese. So make sure you check out later this week or next week our first Camino Portuguese video, because that's what we're really excited for, because it'll be all new for us. Neither one of us speak very good Spanish, but we can order a meal and get by with the basics in Spanish.
We're way better than we were the last time.
Way more confident this time in Spanish. But next week in Portugal, we know nothing. So Portuguese is going to be really a challenge for us because we have almost zero Portuguese. We know bom dia and bom camino, and that's about an hola, which is the same.
It's the same.
So that's, you now know as much Portuguese as we do. So that'll be a challenge, but we've been told that in Portugal, many people speak English, maybe even more so than in Spain. So we hope that we're going to get by just fine.
Yeah, it'll work out.
I don't think we said, we started walking today about 7 a.m. I think it was 7:05 when we walked out of the room. So it's probably about quarter after right now. And
it's nice and quiet.
It is nice and quiet. We don't have a crowd. There's one pilgrim way up in front of us, and that's the only pilgrim we've seen so far today.
I think she left from our same pension. So.
Oh, that could be. We last night at Melilla, where we stayed, Casa Melilla, there were the two of us and then 3 solo pilgrims. One girl from New York who had just gotten off of the Camino Primitivo, which joined the Camino Francis yesterday.
She's been working really hard. That's a tough Camino, and she did it in 11 days with no rest days.
One woman from Ireland who had walked all the way from St. John's, the entire Camino Francis, and then a young man from Germany who had walked from Léon, same place we started. So they each had private rooms. We had a nice dinner with the 4 of them last night. Drank a little too much wine, which was okay. And here's what the Camino looks like right now. Buen Camino.
Buen Camino. More fields of eucalyptus.
Little Camino town that has not woken up yet.
English?
English. Ah, bien. Muchas gracias. Buen camino.
Gracias. This place has a constant party going on. Yes, those are all used beer bottles, but it gets better. They call it a beer garden. It definitely is. We have 3 more kilometers until our breakfast break, lunch break. The wall. Just wait a second. Hello, buen camino.
Good morning, buen camino.
So it is day 13 of walking. Yay!
Day 16 of being in Spain.
And we started walking today from the village of Villamayor. We taxied ahead just a little bit because of foot issues, and we definitely wanted to walk the last part of the walk. So we taxied a little bit at the first part of the walk. So Villamayor to the cathedral is going to be about 9 kilometers.
Which will put us just over the goal that we had, which was to walk 300 kilometers on the Camino Francis.
So those stats will be our final stats, which you'll see on our Instagram page, actually before this video even posts. So we've got a pretty nice morning today.
It's I think it started out about 68 degrees Fahrenheit. It's going to get up to 72, mostly cloudy. So nice.
No rain though.
No rain. There's a good breeze coming through. So I think it's going to be a really nice day. Good walk.
So if you've seen any news about Spain or Europe, you've heard about this massive heat wave that is attacking Europe right now. Ironically enough, Galicia and Portugal seems to be getting mostly missed by the heat wave. So lucky for us, still unfortunate.
We weren't lucky in 2017.
Unfortunate for the rest of Europe.
Unfortunate for everybody else.
They're predicting temperatures between 95 and 105 degrees with very high humidity. The humidity is supposed to add about 10 degrees to the field.
It's going to be really hard on the pilgrims. So
Yeah, the pilgrims behind us.
If you're watching this because you're getting started in July, start early. Be very thoughtful of how much water you have. And if you can bring a little bit of electrolytes with you, like that's what we put in our water every morning.
We'll insert a little photo of that right here.
Yeah, having those electrolytes makes a big difference, and having that like morning and midday really helps you out.
The other thing I would really recommend is a bandana of some sort, not just to keep your face dry and mop yourself off. Buen Camino. But to put that, dip it in water along the way, just to keep yourself cool with some cold water on your head, around your neck, and your face.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
Some people have like frog togs. They're thicker, and that would make a big difference.
Yeah, anything to help keep yourself cool.
Yeah.
Because
start early.
This is
and bring a headlamp so you can start.
Not typical, but neither was the beginning of our Camino with temperatures in the mid-30s.
Yeah.
It's ironic that we've started in the mid-30s and now they're predicting that temperatures could go up over 100. So I think the new typical is that nothing is typical weather-wise along the Camino's route.
Absolutely.
So today we're walking into the cathedral. Tomorrow morning we are going to be flying out of the Santiago airport. We have to catch a taxi about 5 a.m. to get to the airport by about 5:45. Our flight leaves at, I think, 6:50.
And then we'll have the rest of that day. We're flying, it's like a 3-hour with transfer in Madrid flight, which we really wanted to have like in the middle of the trip, just to have something quick to get down to Lisbon. Because at the end of the trip, we're like, okay, we can sit a little longer, but it's a 10-hour bus ride from Santiago to Lisbon. So we thought flying the first time, and we found it months and months ago for less than €50 a person to fly. But we'll have the rest of a rest day tomorrow and a rest day the following day. So we've got some time.
So that means we'll be starting a new video series. Whoa, it's going to be Cruising with the Colemans Season 2. Ha!
Oh,
Not really.
For that fancy.
But we will start it as a new series of videos, and when you see our next video, it's going to be the Camino Portuguese, and we're going to go back to calling it Day 1 again. Because for many people, doing part of the Camino Francis and then doing part of the Camino Portuguese, or all of the Camino Portuguese in our case, is not a very typical way of walking a Camino. So we're going to post it as 2 separate Caminos. So don't get confused when you see our next video and we're back at kilometer 0 and day 0.
Well, we'll put all of the stats at the bottom of our Instagram page, and it'll differentiate between what Camino we're on and then our just overall total.
And then all those,
how the transportation, what transportation we're using.
And all of those stats are also on our description for the videos. So make sure, if you haven't already looked at all of our various Camino Francis videos, that you check those out. I think it's a total of 5 videos, including our travel day video. And then make sure you're looking ahead to get all of our Camino Portuguese. And then at the end of July, we'll start a 3rd series, which is going to be the Camino Muxia Finisterre. And that'll be, I think, a 9-day series of walking, because we walk 3 days to Muxia, have a rest day, and then a day walking to Finisterre, and then another rest day, because we really want to explore those 2 beautiful coastal cities.
Plus we're on holiday, we'll slow down a little.
And then 3 days of walking back to Santiago from Finisterre. So that'll be 9 days. And then we'll have the sad video of traveling home. No one wants to see that.
But we'll have to find fun things to do in Ohio. So.
We will. We usually do. So we're going to talk a little bit later about how our Camino Portuguese is going to be changing from what our initial plan was. Because of Michelle's foot issues, we've decided we're going to try something a little bit different. So we're working on arrangements today and tomorrow to make a big change in how we're going to do the Camino Portuguese. So stay tuned for that, because that's might be surprising to some people.
But you want to see the exciting Camino right now.
Oh, the Camino is beautiful. You've seen this eucalyptus forest behind me as we've been walking. Beautiful. And it does look beautiful. It does. But this is the view of the Camino right now. So, ooh, look, lumber. I bet it's eucalyptus.
Hey, the Camino can't be great every day.
You know, if one side of your view is beautiful, then look to one side of the road.
Aw, thanks, honey. That was very nice.
I know, right? Because this is the better side of the view. and Camino. All right, so we have arrived at Monte de Gozo, or the Mountain of Joy. And the reason it's called that is because this is the spot one where you can see Santiago for the first time. Not yet, obviously. We're walking towards the viewpoint. But this is the first pilgrim's view of Santiago. Pope John Paul visited Santiago at some point, I think during the 80s. So there's a sculpture here that commemorates Pope John Paul's pilgrimage to Santiago. He did not walk the whole Camino. And St. Francis of Assisi's pilgrimage. He did walk the Camino. So there's this large statue that we're about to have a view of that commemorates their two different pilgrimages, many 100 years apart. And we'll have some little cafe here, almost like a concession stand because we're in a city park. And as soon as I get around the corner, I'll show you Monte Gozo statue because I don't have a clear view of it yet. We're walking around it. Here's the statue. Now you're like, oh, that statue. If you follow the Camino at all, you've seen pictures of this. But the two pilgrims at the top are supposed to be the Pope and St. Francis. Apparently they're getting ready to do some rehab on it because of the fence around it. Certainly looks like it could use a facelift. All right, so there is the Pope John Paul Memorial, and that fast forward that you just watched was us walking from there through this parkland area. We walked through that row of trees, and then down and across the road, and up this path to the pilgrim statues here. They are off the Camino. It is absolutely worth the walk though, because they're beautiful, and it's a really nice photo spot that is an iconic view of the Camino. And you can see right here in the background, those three little tips right in the center of the screen.
Right.
See, Michelle's trying to help right there.
Perfect.
Those three little tips are the spires of the Cathedral de Santiago. So that's where we have to walk. And I think we're about 5 kilometers, maybe a little less than 5 kilometers to the cathedral. But we have to walk all the way back now to the actual path over there. So this is probably about 300 meters, maybe a little further off the Camino.
If you are walking the Camino, come up and get this view, because you'll never see the cathedral from this perspective. And to see these statues, and you'll see the still photo, I'm sure Brian will insert that shows us playing around, acting like the ancient pilgrims. Good stuff. So
worth the detour, and you know, you've come this far. What's an extra kilometer out of the way?
Well, and it's kind of it's that wanting to do this part before you get to Santiago. Good stuff.
Cherishing these last moments of the Camino Francis, because we know from experience that what we're about to see is not quite so pretty.
Well, and we're about to come into all the crowds of people. There are no crowds that come up here. So this is your quiet moment before you enter Santiago. And I don't know if you can see it in the fast forward, but there are a lot of pilgrims just sitting around and having those moments. So nice to have. So as we sit here near the pilgrim statue that you just saw and the Pope John Paul memorial, we're doing what we said just a minute ago, and that's taking a minute and reflecting on our Camino. So our Camino, Francis, was 16 total days, 13 walking days, and we've done this before. We've talked about that. Unfortunately, there's no YouTube video on it because we hadn't started YouTubing yet. We've done this before. We knew, kind of what to expect, but there's something about the Camino where there's always the unexpected. So just to give you a little bit of backstory, before in 2017, I had injured my foot. I have bunions on both my feet, hammer toes, not the best looking feet. And in 2017, I was in a boot from January to March, and we left in May. And I knew I needed surgery, but if you know anything about foot surgery, you put it off as long as possible. And if you're active, you know the thought of being down for 6 months is horrifying. So I put it off, and actually this year, so fast forward this year, I ended up being in a boot from March. So last time was January to March to May. I was in a boot until 2 weeks before because I had 2 stress fractures on the top of my foot, both times. And so my foot's been bothering me. You've heard us talk about that. 2 days ago, I took off my pack. Maybe 3 days ago, I took off my pack. And that helped some. I'm still having a lot of foot problems. And those foot problems are causing me a lot of anxiety because we have such an ambitious plan. So, this is kind of hard to talk about, but the Camino teaches you things. Last time it taught us to buy an RV.
Yeah.
So that was kind of fun. I was kind of hoping for something more along that line, but the Camino taught us it's not about an RV all the time.
So the anxiety over the foot pain was really manifesting itself for Michelle with a lot of breathing issues, and she was having a hard time catching her breath, especially on some of these long uphill walks that we've had.
Which I just thought, I had 2 months without walking. I've had it before. I never dreamt in a million years that the breathing problems were relating to anxiety. I thought, I just need to breathe better.
So the long uphills were causing breathing problems. The long downhills were causing foot problems. We didn't really realize that the breathing problem was a total result of just the foot pain and the adrenaline rush of the foot pain becoming a problem. So last night, yesterday Michelle was really having a lot of problems with breathing. And last night at the hotel, she was having a very difficult, even though we had been resting for a while, having a very difficult time catching her breath, felt a lot of tightness in her chest. So we were concerned that it was either something pneumonia related.
Yeah, your mind wanders, you know.
Never look at WebMD.
Right.
But, it could have been a pneumonia type issue just because of all the moisture and humidity that we've been having.
The weather changes. I mean, walking in 30 degree to, 75 degree, it could have been that.
And of course, it could have also just been a heart attack or some cardiac event.
And like last night, I was the first time ever I could not catch my breath. And so it was about 9:30, and I said to Brian, we're going to the hospital, which was, I think, harder than the actual breathing problem because I don't accept slowing down.
Well, there were a lot of issues there. I mean, first of all, there's the mental issue of just saying, okay, I need to go to the hospital, which for Michelle is really hard because she can be stubborn sometimes. But then there's also the logistical issue of, as Americans in Spain, how does this work? Are we going to be able to communicate with them what the problem is effectively? Are they going to be able to communicate with us effectively? How much is it going to cost? How does the insurance get dealt with?
Because if you're from America, you know how much that could have cost.
So we were in the town of Pedrouzo. I started searching for hospitals. I found a 24-hour hospital that was in Santiago. It was one of the largest hospital networks in the country. It was part of one of the largest networks. So we thought, well, if anybody's going to accept our insurance or if anybody's going to be easy to work with, this is the hospital.
Yeah.
So we took about a 30-minute taxi ride into Santiago. Cost us 23 euro. We flagged down a taxi on the main street in Pedrouzo, walked into the hospital, and the waiting room was packed full of people.
Scary.
But because she was having breathing issues and it seemed like she might be having a heart attack, which if anybody's ever seen an anxiety attack, you know that they look a lot alike. They immediately took her back.
We hadn't seen before, so we didn't know.
Found there was an English translator that was on staff. They have a full-time translator that's there all the time. There's
She's
always
called it,
someone
her
working.
job is wellness
And welfare.
or welfare. And what's really interesting is her job literally was to hold my hand through the whole process.
And she was part of an international department in the hospital.
She lived in New York for a while. Adore her. Absolutely adore her.
So they took really, really good care of Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
The very first thing they did, they wanted to see her passport, our insurance card, and our credit card. As soon as I handed them the insurance card, they said, "Oh, Blue Cross Blue Shield, no problem."
Which was refreshing to hear. And then, of course, it was, what credit card do we hand them?
Because for Blue Cross Blue Shield in Spain, you have to pay first.
Unless you get checked into the hospital. If you get checked into the hospital and you become an inpatient, then they bill you.
So we had to give them the credit card. They made copies of everything so that basically they could assure that we were able to pay, depending on, of course, what services were needed. So we were in the hospital from about 9:30, 10 o'clock when we got there. And we left there at about 5 a.m.
No, it was about 4 a.m. It was
Okay.
4 a.m.
4 a.m.
But regardless, we were there all night.
In that time, they ruled out pneumonia. They ruled out a heart attack. They were also concerned about a pulmonary embolism.
Because of having a long flight from the U.S., which we didn't even think about because we had told them it had been going on for about 12 of the 15 days that we had been there so far.
And getting progressively worse.
Yeah.
So they thought it could have been a blood clot from flying. So they ruled all those things out and finally determined that it was anxiety.
Which I fought them the whole way. I said, no, it's not. We've been hiking forever. This isn't anxiety. But the more they ruled out, the more I realized it had to have been. And that's where I talk about the fact that the Camino shows you things. The Camino showed us that this wasn't necessarily the plan that we set out for, which we had said all along. If you follow any of our blogs or Instagram pages, you know we've talked about that we always have a plan B. We can taxi. We've taxied a few times this part of the trip so far. But accepting that, if you are someone who likes, you set a goal, accepting taking a taxi and is a totally different thing than planning it. So it was really interesting to me that the Camino showed this to me the day before walking into Santiago, where we were 8 kilometers from our 300 kilometer goal. That this is what we had to learn last night.
So the doctor's advice, she gave her some medication to help with anxiety. And the doctor's advice is, you're on holiday, you're in a beautiful country, enjoy our country, slow down a little bit.
We told them we were going to Portugal. They went on about how great Portugal is and really kept emphasizing the idea that Spaniards are so good at, which is siesta and holiday and just enjoying where you are. And we always do. We really very much do enjoy where we are. We just do it at a little bit faster pace. So
we're going to slow down a little bit. We're still working out the details, which I mentioned earlier. So I'm not going to go into that too much because plans change.
Right.
And we may not...
we don't have any definitive plans yet, but you'll definitely see them as they unfold in, as Brian has now called, season 2, the Camino Portuguese. But there's more to come. I think the lesson here is just... I heard someone say, listen to the whispers before they become screams. And I didn't know what the whispers were telling me. And last night it became a scream. And it was urgent. And I'm so thankful that we had the means and the resources. And we have a bill that is nowhere near what we would have seen in the States.
Oh, so my pragmatic side. We were in the hospital for about 8 hours in the emergency room. She was working with a team of 2 doctors. One was an intensive care doctor and one was the ER doctor. At least 3 or 4 nurses that were working, a lab technician, another doctor.
There were 2 lab technicians, and one test I had to have done, had to have another doctor there while I had the test done because they were for checking for the embolism.
So she had a chest x-ray, a chest CT scan with the
color,
colorant,
contrast.
And then they also had to do, unfortunately, a deep arterial blood draw.
That was not pretty.
I left the room for that because it sounded horrifying. So all of those tests, the 8 hours in the emergency room, and the bill came to about 1,200 euro.
And if I wouldn't have had to have the color contrast, if they would have been able to get my arterial blood, which they weren't able to do, the bill would have only been about 600 euro.
So 1,200 euro for a night in the ER with all those tests sounds like a pretty good deal, honestly.
Especially learning the lesson, which is that, holy cow, I had an anxiety attack that I had no idea. And of course, this is one of those things you don't want to call anybody and tell them yet because you don't know what it is, which creates even more anxiety. But we decided still to walk the last 8K. We slept in as long as the pension would let us. We slept in.
So we did get about 5 hours of sleep.
We're taking our time, and we're going to get to the cathedral when we get there and really focus on resetting our goals.
So, buen camino, and
think about what you learn along the way. Buen
Camino will show us what we need to know. Walking into Santiago, there are all sorts of memorials to pilgrims. Here's the Knight Templar pilgrim. And coming up here, we have this odd little pilgrim. I don't know what he is memorial to, but he looks like Patrick the Starfish. To Peregrino Nino. And then we have another statue right up here, which is a giant one, with panels of pilgrims. And there are more to come. We'll show you. Got me. And you always walk around the corner and there's that train. This is the city building. Here's the Parador Hotel. And here is the cathedral.
No scaffolding.
Hola, we have made it to the cathedral. There it is.
Awkward.
Mwah. So our room here at Pensión de Estrella is on the second floor, which by the way means third floor. And here is a little kitchen, which is shared between us and several other guests. And here is our tiny little room. 2 double beds.
Wait,
A tiny little bathroom. There it is.
there's the bathroom.
Our 2 little beds. But here is what we want in Santiago. This is not the cathedral. This is the Church of San Mateo, I think. St. Matthew. But this is our view outside our window. And in this plaza, we know it will be quiet tonight. After a celebratory glass of wine, we had dinner and made it an early night because we had an early flight the next morning to Lisbon. Due to time constraints, we did not go to the pilgrim office and get our Compostela after this pilgrimage. We will do that when we're finished with the Portuguese Camino, so look for that in a future video.